Hello again. Well, I'm back for another episode from my studio. We're still under stay-at-home order here in Washington State. I'm really getting a lot of studio work done during this time, which is fun for me, and it's almost like meditation. So I hope you are hanging in there, and I hope you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We've been doing a lot of good work, staying at home and flattening the curve. I know the healthcare workers really appreciate it, and at least here for Washington State, I think we've done a good job by slowing the virus down enough that we didn't overwhelm the hospitals. So great job everyone out there. Hang in there. We're getting closer to the end now, and the results surely aren't as bad as what was feared. Well, today I'm going to paint this little satsuma. It's a dekopon, which I love eating them. I love painting them. I've done a painting of this subject before, and it was a lot of fun. I kind of played with a watercolor approach with my oil paints, and let me explain that a little bit. I do a really loose wash initially. I think you've seen that. I picked that up from Richard Schmid's instructional books and videos, and have really enjoyed doing that. I've painted watercolor and oil for years. I always loved the transparent effects in watercolor, and I've been trying to capture that a little bit in my oil paintings. And this approach with a diluted turpentine wash initially really seems to give that transparent effect. So what I'll do is do a real loose wash of the background, and you can see I have the reference image and my panel on a slant because I want the paint to drip down. I want it to flow down the panel, leaving some streaks. Accentuate those streaks with the brush and paper towel and palette knife and get some neat textural effects in the background. And I'm going to leave that background really loose and transparent. And then, like my normal procedure, I'll come in and I'll wipe away the actual fruit, the subject, with a paper towel or with a brush that's diluted with some mineral spirits. I use Gamsol in the studio. So I am using turpentine here in the studio. I don't like to use turpentine indoors, but when I do, I open the window, I turn on the ventilator fan, and make sure I close up the turpentine whenever I'm not using it and put it away as soon as possible. I use Winsor & Newton distilled turpentine, the best quality I can get at a reasonable price. They have it on Amazon. Sometimes it's on at a good value. Dick Blick also has a good sale going on right now, so check around. You can usually find a good source for your art materials if you look around. As always, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you joining me for these videos. Be careful doing this in the studio. The paint will drip, so I put a drop cloth down on the floor under the painting, and I kind of wipe up the excess when I can. Here are my materials. I have a few paints laid out straight from the tube. I've got Gamblin Ultramarine Blue, Winsor & Newton Burnt Umber, Rembrandt Burnt Sienna, Winsor & Newton Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Winsor & Newton Cad Yellow, and Graham Cerulean Blue. I don't always use these brands, but I do like these brands. These are good paints that have a high pigment load and really stand up well. I've switched lately from plain alizarin crimson to permanent alizarin crimson because I'm finding that the alizarin crimson does fade over time. And also I've been adding a few other brands, Williamsburg, Old Holland, and Michael Harding, into the mix once in a while just to see how they work. I've heard great things about those paints, so I do experiment constantly with different brands. I have a few different palette knives. I usually pick one about this size and about this shape. I've got a large bristle brush and a paper towel, and I have my distilled turpentine in a container that I can close. Now I'll pre-mix some colors, just a little, to try to match the colors I'm seeing predominantly in the reference photo, and then I'll quickly and pretty loosely put the wash in, and I'll try to get some effects. As the turpentine evaporates, the paint will set up. It'll dry just a little bit so that I can start to blend and scrape and smudge with the brush or with a paper towel or with a palette knife and get some of those neat transparent effects. Got the wash down, and I've started to manipulate the paint on the panel. So as this turpentine and oil paint set up, it becomes a little firmer, and I can start to wipe it with the paper towel and blend it with the brush and get some interesting textures, interesting effects. So that's what I'll do. But first I'll clean up my palette, get the turpentine scraped off and put away, and get to my oil painting medium, and limit the exposure to the odor from the turpentine as much as I can. Okay, I'll be using this number 6 Rosemary & Co. Evergreen short flat. It's big enough that I can draw quickly with it on a relatively small panel like this, but it has a nice stiff body, soft tip, great for wiping away the paint. I'll use a paper towel to begin with to wipe away the big areas of the paint. painting done now by wiping away the paint to expose the lightest lights. Now I'm going to step back and flick my eyes back and forth between the painting and the reference photo, and any problems with the drawing will jump as I flick my eyes back and forth. Those areas are going to jump out at me and I can correct them. I can see a couple small things with the painting that I need to correct. Here, this segment of satsuma needs to extend just a little further down, come out a little further to make that look balanced and whole, give it volume. This segment needs to tip forward just a little bit, and this point here is a little too far down. It needs to come back this way. So just a couple minor changes, easy to fix now before I apply a lot of paint, and that's why you want to do that. You want your drawing to be solid. Next I'll mix up the darkest values and the lightest lights and get those placed on the panel early so that I can see the full value range on the panel. I'm using a Rosemary & Co. number 4 pure sable. It's very soft but has a nice firm body, great for doing detail work. It's a flat, but if you paint with the knife edge you can get a line, you can get a sharp edge, or if you paint with the full flat you can get a wide stroke and cover a lot of ground. As you can see here, I'm painting with the contour, with the surface of the fruit. I find that with fruit or with flowers, it really makes a convincing surface if you follow the contour with your brush strokes. I've painted the darkest darks, the shadows. Now I'm moving into the darker midtones. Those reds and oranges are really glowing, but they are pretty dark in value. If you compare it side by side on my palette, you can see there's not a lot of value change. The big difference is coming from the chroma of the paint. This painting has some vibrant colors, so I like to clean my brush with Gamsol pretty often. Swish it around in the Gamsol and wipe it off on a paper towel. I'm constantly comparing the paint on my palette to the paint in the reference photo, using the palette knife against the image in the reference photo to make sure I'm putting down the correct color, correct value. The value at this point is almost more important than the color itself. If you get the value right, it'll be an interesting image. Okay, now I'm switching to a Rosemary & Co. No. 6 Pure Sable Filbert. It's a great brush for detail. It has a wide body but a sharp point. Holds its point really well. So great for detail. You can also cover a lot of ground quickly if you want to. So really flexible. To achieve a really rich, dark shadow, you can take a little bit of mineral spirits, just a little, you don't need a lot, and your dark mixed paint. This is paint straight out of the tube, just blended, so no medium. So with just a little bit of mineral spirits and the straight paint, paint into the shadow with a soft brush. This is a Rosemary & Co. No. 4 Short Flat Masters. So another great brush from Rosemary & Co. Nice firm body but really soft brush hair. Here I'm switching to the Rosemary & Co. Ivory Filbert. It's a synthetic brush, has a nice firm body, keeps a sharp tip, great for doing detail. Here's the finished painting. I like how it came out. It's got kind of a freshness and captures the light and the moment pretty well. It's a fun way to paint, to do that initial turpentine wash and then kind of erase the drawing and then repaint. It really makes the areas where you erase that initial wash glow. It really shines with the white panel behind the clean paint. So it really works well with flowers and with fruit. So kind of a fun technique. I like how energetic and full of surprises the beginning is as well. Splashing the paint on and letting it run down the panel is fun. And it kind of forces you to loosen up. So as always, thank you for joining me. I'm going to throw a longer version of this video out on my Patreon channel. It'll have almost no time lapse. It'll just be stroke by stroke. You can watch the whole painting. If you're interested in that, I know that's a great way to learn. I've watched a few videos like that, and you learn a lot of tips and tricks from the artists you like by watching how they apply the paint in real time. As always, thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe, let your friends know, and I will see you next time.